An excerpt from I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. As he pulled her across the living room, she started to move. Her hands closed over his wrists and her body began to twist and flop on the rug. Her eyes were still closed, but she gasped and muttered, and her body kept trying to writhe out of his grip. Her dark nails dug into his flesh. He tore out of her grasp with a snarl and dragged her the rest of the way by her hair. Usually he felt a twinge when he realized that, but for some affliction he didn't understand, these people were the same as he. But now an experimental fervor had seized him, and he could think of nothing else. Even so, he shuddered at the strangled sound of horror she made when he threw her on the sidewalk outside. She lay twisting helplessly on the sidewalk, hands opening and closing, lips drawn back from red-spotted lips. Robert Neville watched her tensely. His throat moved. It wouldn't last. The feeling of callous brutality. He bit his lips as he watched her. All right, she's suffering, he argued with himself. But she's one of them, and she'd kill me gladly if she got the chance. You've got to look at it that way. It's the only way. Teeth clenched, he stood there and watched her die. In a few minutes, she stopped moving, stopped muttering, and her hands uncurled slowly, like white blossoms on the cement. Robert Neville crouched down and felt for her heartbeat. There was none. Already her flesh was growing cold. He straightened up with a thin smile. It was true then. He didn't need the stakes. After all this time, he'd finally found a better method. Then his breath caught. But how did he know the woman was really dead? How could he know until sunset? The thought filled him with a new, more restless anger. Why did each question blight the answers before it? He thought about it as he sat drinking a can of tomato juice taken from the supermarket behind which he was parked. How was he going to know? You couldn't very well stay with the woman until sunset came. Take her home with you, you fool. Again, his eyes closed and he felt a shudder of irritation go through him. He was missing all the obvious answers today. Now he'd have to go all the way back and find her, and he wasn't even sure where the house was. He started the motor and pulled away from the parking lot, glancing down at his watch. 3 o'clock. Plenty of time to get back before they came. He eased the gas pedal down and the station wagon pulled ahead faster. It took him about a half hour to relocate the house. The woman was still in the same position on the sidewalk. Putting on his gloves, Neville lowered the back gate of the station wagon and walked over to the woman. As he walked, he noticed her figure. No, don't start that again, for God's sake. He dragged the woman back to the station wagon and tossed her in. Then he closed the gate and took off his gloves. He held up his watch and looked at it. 3 o'clock. Plenty of time to... He jerked up the watch and held it against his ear. His heart suddenly started jumping. The watch had stopped.